Hey folks, Ryan here from Mr. Row's Gaming Rants and Reviews, and I've got a rant for you today. And it's going to be all revolving around tutorial systems in board games. So before I get into that topic, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, you click that notification bell so that when no new videos are starting to come out, and make sure you like, comment on whether or not you enjoy tutorial systems in board games. So let's get right into the rant here. And the rant is not that tutorial systems in board games are bad. No, my take is that I think more board games should have tutorial-like systems in place, especially, and I'm talking about you medium heavy, even heavier style, complex style games, I believe should have some sort of tutorial system to kind of ease players into the gaming experience instead of front loading them with a whole ton of information and everything like that. Now, what's got me on this topic? I'm going to get to there when I'm on the topic. So I'm going to highlight a few games here that I quite enjoy. One game I haven't actually played yet, but I've heard a lot of great things about its system. But two games that I've been enjoying. I'm just going to switch over to the screen here right now. First one, obviously, Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. Now, this came out after the original Gloomhaven, and this was kind of touted as quote-unquote Gloomhaven Light and everything like that, but that was only because they used the first five, if I'm remembering correctly, about first 5 scenarios, kind of like a tutorial type system. The very first scenario of Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion is very simplistic, kind of getting players used to the card play, movement, and combat, which is a really big piece of the Gloomhaven experience. And then, of course, the next scenario introduced a few more things, like if I'm remembering correctly, there is like moving into rooms, and there's some traps, and there are a few other things. And then, of course, the next scenario includes stuff like, objectives and the elements, and now the enemies have their own deck of cards that they have to actually manage and whatnot and everything. So the Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion did a very, very good job at getting you, hopefully, after about 5 scenarios there, into what I call quote-unquote Gloomhaven mode. Okay, so that's an example of a very well done tutorial type system that took a very meaty, complex game. Like, all of those rules in the original Gloomhaven, you had to know right up front. You had to read the big rule book. You had to try to understand it, and then you go right into it. Okay? This made things a little bit more accessible to players. A game that I've been playing through right now with my wife is That Time You Killed Me by Pandasaurus Games. Now, this is not as complex as, say, Gloomhaven, but it does have some complexity in some of the rule sets. So there is the basic rule set on how pieces are going to move across the boards and what things kind of do. And then, spoiler alerts, then there are 3 module boxes that kind of introduce mechanics and components into the game. And they have their own rule sets on how you interact and how you can be able to play with those particular components. But then module number 4, the very last module, I believe is the way that the game is intended to play, is where you mix and match the different modules together. Now, if you were to just give us this game straight up with just like, here are all of these components, and everything's out there, and these are all of the rules for how everything interacts with one another, this could have been a very complex, very overwhelming style of game. But instead, what they got you to do is they got you to play with some of the things first, and then, okay, put those things away. Now let's play with these things in the game. Learn how they work. Okay, now let's play with these things for a while. See how they work. Okay, now you have the understanding of the entire game system. A game that's been touted to me by Norm of the Cardboard Conjecture podcast quite oftentimes. He says this is his favorite hidden movement game, is Mind Management. Now, we've had a fortunate enough that I've been able to be with Norm at the time of the Cardboard Conjecture podcast, where we are able to talk to Jay Cormier and Sen Foon Lim about their design process of this game and how they started off, that this thing started off really big and really complex with a whole bunch of rules and everything, until they realized through some play testing that there was too much going on. And so they scaled it back, and they started off with, and they call it the shift system, where you're going to play through scenarios. You're going to play through games. They're not scenario based. You'll play through games, and depending on who wins or loses the scenario or the game at that time, they get to unlock something, and they unlock a little piece of the gameplay for that particular side and that particular player. And then they'll play a game again, and then maybe whoever wins or loses, now they get to also open up another thing, and eventually you'll open up enough things over a course of many gameplays that you'll have all of the things that would truly make this the big experience that they wanted to have in the end. So again, now I'm going to include that into my tutorial system type of discussion here. So where am I going with this? That I think this is the way to go, especially when you have these games that have, I'm going to call them complex rule sets. Okay, I am a, how do you put this and everything? I play lots of games. Okay, I play light games. I play really complex, heavy, what we will call heavy games and everything like that. Okay, I sometimes still have troubles learning how to play these certain games. Now, what I would really like is that I would take a game. Let's talk about. I'll just search it up right now. I'm going to talk about Arc Nova. Okay, I'm going to bring this one up because I saw a Twitter thread. I believe it was from Riley Stock, friend of the show here, was mentioning that him and his wife were walking through the game store. This game gravitated towards his wife. His wife was kind of intrigued by this type of game, probably because of the theme that's on it. And Riley was kind of really concerned about the complexity and the heaviness of this game. It's weighted at a 3.74, so we're getting towards the higher end of the complexity scale and everything like that. Now, what if Arc Nova had a tutorial system built into it? Okay, maybe instead of that gigantic stack of cards that was there, maybe you start your very first game with maybe half that stack, and that half that stack is tailored towards, like, all the cards kind of, can synergize together to kind of get players thinking about what cards can work together type of thing. Maybe I don't know all of the actions. I have not played Arc Nova myself, but maybe some of the things, like maybe there's some actions that maybe limit the number of actions that a person can take in those early games. And then you play like a game or two, and then you, like, say, open up an envelope, and it has now another smaller stack of cards, and they all kind of can synergize together, and they also synergize well with the previous types of cards that were already in. You shuffle that all up, and then you kind of, through multiple game sessions, I don't know how that would look like, but over the course of the game sessions, you introduce all of the game mechanics to the game, and then all of a sudden you have the big, massive stack of cards at the very end, because now that everything's going to be all shuffled together. I would think something like that. If this game, Arc Nova, had a tutorial system built into it or some sort of thing like that, maybe this would be a less daunting of a game to maybe some gamers that would really enjoy this type of theme, but are maybe, they're not there yet. They can't process that many rules all up front. Other games that have done this, I'm going to switch my screen back over here. I remember not the first printing, but the later printings of Wingspan came with the way, I think it was referred to as the Swift Pack. And the purpose of the Swift Pack was kind of try to get players introduced into the game system, kind of get, play through some simple turns like that, to hopefully experience how a game round or some, I can't remember. I don't own the Swift Pack for Wingspan, but I believe it was used as some sort of introductory tutorial type of thing for Wingspan. Root has some sort of tutorial. It's not like you don't unlock things as the game progresses, but it does have kind of like those tutorial cards where it's just like you read verbatim on the cards, and like, this is how this turn should work, and this is how that should work, and this is the progression. This is kind of like the feel. Now, even let's hop on to Root. What if Root had like that tutorial type of system? Maybe you're only allowed, like, let's take the Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion thing. Maybe your first games, you can only do things like move and attack, and there are cards in the deck that kind of just like all play together around movement and attack or something like that, just to kind of get players familiar with how that particular aspect works. And then you kind of get into like some of the more subtle strategies of the game, and then, I don't know, spouting off. This is a rant. And so my thing here is that if there are publishers that are, or game developers that are looking at this, I think this is an untapped market that I think needs to grow a little bit more in the gaming hobby. It's kind of adopting the video game style of the gaming market, where make some of these more complex. I'm calling them complex. For some people, they might not be so complex, but these complex games, medium heavy games, that are accessible to some people because they fear that the number of rules that are in these games, give them some sort of tutorial. Like, I know some games have like the introductory game, but in my experience, the introductory game doesn't really solve that issue most of the time. Usually it's just like, oh, ignore this one aspect of the game. Well, no, usually there's still complexity to that game, and just removing that one piece. Maybe it's like scoring, or maybe it's just like, hey, the advanced cards versus the standard cards type of thing. No, things need to be introduced to players over, and also that's probably going to also lead into people getting repeated plays of a certain game. Now, I know that's hard for some people in this hobby that will always want to jump onto the new hotness and get onto the next thing. I'm one of those people. Don't worry about it. But I would still buy into a game that's very complex, like Ark Nova, maybe even like Terraforming Mars or Underwater Cities or something along those lines. And if things kind of just introduced very slowly over the course of the games, I'm going to go back to the Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, that time you killed me, the mind management types of ways of introducing content into games until you get the full game experience eventually after a certain number of plays. I think that this is something that needs to happen a little bit more in the board gaming space. Am I wrong? Am I really out to lunch? I would like you folks to comment on this. How have been your experiences with the tutorial system? I really enjoy them. I really do. So please like, comment, subscribe to this channel. Tell me your thoughts about the tutorial systems. And I'm not talking about the introductory games or whatnot and everything. Have you had experiences with Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, Ark Nova, That Time You Killed Me, and Mind Management? And maybe I'm missing some games. Are there other games out there that kind of use that tutorial build-up kind of system? And I'm not talking about campaign games or legacy games. These are just games that, complex rule sets and are built up over time. Okay, I've probably spouted off about this a little bit more than I wanted to. I'm just kind of wanted to get that off my chest, that I think more complex games need to have these tutorial type of systems to get us into the rules. All these. Can I imagine how many more times I would play Vital Lacerda style games if they kind of had a tutorial system into it, kind of like, I don't know what that would look like, because you got to design the game kind of with that in mind, or maybe you just kind of got to go scale it back. Okay, folks, I've been Ryan of Mr. Row's Gaming Rants and Reviews. This has been a rant about games need to have tutorial systems in them. Okay, rant over.